and welcome to Candidates Corner on LPTV, a production of the Libertarian Party and Libertarian National Committee. Whitney Bilyeu serving as chair. Tonight, as always, John Gapso is on the big board. I'm your host, Pat Ford, and we're looking forward to a wonderful evening tonight. A little bit of housekeeping. First of all, our candidate, Michelle Merino, is having camera difficulties on her end. So the camera may come in and out, but we'll continue the audio as long as we can. It's one of the joys of, if you will, the miracle of IP addresses, communicating with each other from across the country and virtually every aspect imaginable, if you will, to the shared computing experience, as they say. Another bit of housekeeping, if you will. This year, I believe for the second year, we're going to have live LPTV-based election night coverage this Tuesday evening, covering literally the entire nation. A couple of dozen folks are going to weigh in during the evening, including yours truly, to talk about candidates from their area and what's happening with all these elections that we've been talking about now all year. Well, since last November. Carl Schultz is manning the helm at Election Central. John Gapso will be here on the big board here in Providence, Rhode Island. And we'll be starting at 8 o'clock Eastern time. I invite all of you to join us. Be able to message in comments and compliments and hopefully congratulations for winning candidates around the nation. The interviews. And of course, we'll keep you up to date on vote counts as they progress through the evening. Let's get to tonight's business. Candidates Corner on LPTV. As always, we have a few motivations for doing what we do here every Friday night. It's been about a year and a half, believe it or not. But ultimately, we want to give the libertarian community an opportunity to meet our wonderful down ballot candidates. We want to challenge those candidates to incorporate what we call lunch pail issues to the voters, but through a libertarian spectrum, a libertarian prism, a libertarian philosophy, a libertarian viewpoint. Finally, we want to continue to work on that bond between affiliates and candidates and voters and supporters and, well, donors around the nation that, for example, tonight's guest, Michelle Merino, who's running for the West Pittston Town Council, is just as important to our movement as, say, somebody running for office in whatever hometown you're from. Why is that? As we're like to say, that the libertarian candidates in all of these communities are very often not only the first candidate to run for office as libertarian, but for many people, the very first practicing hardcore, boots on the ground, philosophy-based, politically based libertarian that they've ever met. So for every one of us in our interactions with the public day to day, whether we be candidates, whether we be supporters, voters, folks just doing the work in the field, the hard work of running candidates, the hard work of running for office, each one of us is an ambassador to the rest of this country for the libertarian movement. So how we interact with people, what type of kindness we show, empathy we show to voters, not only about the libertarian philosophy, for whom, again, many of it will be a first-time embrace, but for the circumstances that they face in some of the most challenging moments in this country's history, easily within the last 100 years. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce Michelle Merino. She is a candidate for West Pittston Town Council. Michelle, thanks for joining us tonight, and how are things going?
Hi, Pat. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor. Am I still having camera issues at the moment?
Yeah, we're just going to go with it with your campaign picture for right now. So this way we can focus on the conversation.
Okay, well that works. Well, once again, thank you so much for having me. This is such a joy to be able to speak with you. Everything's going well. It's a busy time with Halloween coming up this weekend and having 4 kids to to have Halloween with. It's been pretty crazy, but otherwise going well. And elections on Tuesday, so we're gearing up for that.
So tell us, first of all, give us a little bit of a background about yourself, the work you engage in, a little bit about your family. And of course, one of the things we always want to know about is, when was that libertarian moment for you? When was the moment that you all of a sudden realized, I'm a libertarian?
Well, I reside in West Pittston, which is a borough in Luzerne County, which is in the northeastern region of Pennsylvania. I'm employed in the administrative office of a nonprofit mental health center here in here in the Luzerne County area. I'm married. I have a blended family of 4. I have 2 children. My husband has 2 children. I'm also the chair of the Luzerne County affiliate of the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania. And I'm running for office now.
And what was your motivation? And that sounds like such a superficial question, but as I've gotten into conversations with candidates from around the country, we realize that there's often a compelling backstory. Sometimes it's just a general desire to serve the community. Sometimes it's all of the above. What was your wake-up call where you felt you need not only to be the chair of a local affiliate, which can be a daunting enough task, but ultimately, what was it that drove you to run for office?
Well, first of all, I think I've always been libertarian in principle. Even before I knew anything about political parties, I was just one who always seemed to question the rules, and not in a combative way, but I was always questioning, why is this a rule? Who is this hurting? It always came down to that. What is the purpose of this? And there was just always so many rules and regulations just in general that I would question. I first registered as a Democrat when I first registered to vote, mainly because that's all I really knew. But I was never able to consciously vote for either Democrat or Republican, just because I never found myself aligning with them. And then it was when Gary Johnson ran. It was around that time where I thought, I want to be more involved. I want to have my voice heard, but I need to look into what else is out there. And that's when I found the Libertarian Party. And I thought to myself, this is it. This is exactly what I've been saying, what I've been thinking. And I really felt like it was just me. Nobody else thinks the way I do. And then it turns out that a lot of people do. But I didn't really get involved until this last election when Joe Jorgensen ran. And that was mainly because there is this preconceived notion of libertarians that we only show up during presidential elections. And that's something I heard a lot. And I thought to myself, I'm actually guilty of that. I'm actually kind of guilty of voting for these presidential elections, and then that's about it. And not enough was happening along with society changing how they're viewing these political parties and the duopoly. And I thought, okay, it's time for me to get involved and try to see what I can do to help. So I got in touch with just various people who were involved in campaigning for Jorgensen and the Libertarians in the state of Pennsylvania. And it was just a snowball effect after that. I was just getting involved in every single thing I possibly could. How can I help? How can I help? How can I help? I was looking for a contact in Luzerne County, and I found there are a lot of liberty-minded people in Luzerne County, but there wasn't an organized affiliate. So during the campaigning and the petitioning, I got in touch with a lot of them, and we got to know each other. And after the dust settled, we were able to organize ourselves, and I was voted as chair. And we have a really fantastic affiliate, really, really fantastic members in Luzerne County. And I'm super, super proud to be chair of that group of people. When it came time for this election, I was out petitioning for local elections here in Luzerne County, talking to residents of West Pittston. There seemed to be a real desire for something different. The Borough Council here in West Pittston, it's just kind of been the same people that have been in Borough Council, and there was a disconnect. A lot of the community members didn't feel connected. They didn't feel like they were being heard. They were looking for just something different, something new to maybe change things up and move the borough in a different direction. And then it occurred to me, why not me? I'm out here, I'm talking, and I'm willing to do what I need to do and what's best for the community. So I threw my hat in, and here I am.
Excellent. Talk to me a little bit about West Pittston. One of the fun parts about doing this show, among many, is that we get to have a little bit of a snapshot into the lives of different communities. And while there are so many unifying factors, particularly these days between COVID and the lockdowns and the pandemic and the mandates, there's also so much diversity, economically, philosophically, the style and scope of the community that you're in. So give us a roadmap to West Pittston, Pennsylvania.
West Pittston is a beautiful little town, part of the greater Pittston area. We're in
Greater
between,
metropolitan Pittston area, you mean, the Paris,
right.
if you will.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We're in between the two major towns most people recognize would be Wilkes-Barre and Scranton. So it's a population of about 4,800. The nickname is the Garden Village. One of the pride and joys of West Pittston are the cherry blossom trees. It's just a very quaint, lovely town. Historical. There's beautiful homes and wonderful people. And I've lived here for about 4 years, and I know that isn't very long compared to other residents of West Pittston, but it didn't take very long for me to just absolutely fall in love with the town and know that this is where I want to stay. I'm in it for the long run. We have really great small businesses, really great restaurants, especially the restaurants, and they're all local townsfolk. We're right along the Susquehanna River, so there's a great view there. It's just a really beautiful town with really, really great people.
Outstanding. You know, there are so many facets to community life, and it's funny, you mentioned local restaurants. I don't do much debating on social media anymore, but I got into a little. Now I got into a little bit of debate, and it's funny. You never know who's watching, right? One local post, I don't know why it was on my feed, was talking about a local chain restaurant coming to their community, and to me, on a personal level, I'm not such a big fan. But then again, I live in the crowded Northeast where there's all sorts of chains and everything. And I after the conversation, I came to realize that in many communities, some of these chains represent just sort of an outside influence that hasn't happened. And I'm not trying to make them sound like, a small town USA or anything, but that can happen. But personally, when I hear about a locally owned business community, I'm at that point in my life where my heart grows fond of that. I want to know that there's unique aspects, culture, and of the community that's owned by the community. So folks not only have an investment in their own lives living in that town, but so many of the businesses are locally owned. And of course, when I think of Pennsylvania fine dining, I will always ask folks, as I do on this show, about, I believe, a culinary treat that's particular to Northeast Pennsylvania. And of course, I'm talking about scrapple. If I don't know if you're a scrapple fan or a scrapple gal or not, but I will just say to folks, if you find yourself in Pennsylvania, ask for it. You'll get a kind of a quiet look, but ask for it. So, is the town predominantly small businesses? Is there area industry nearby, universities? What are some of the things that people in West Pittston go to work to?
Well, our main hub would be right across the river, and that would be Pittston. That's where you'll find more of the industry type of businesses and the commercial type things. The main cities, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, that's where a lot of people will travel to work. So West Pittston is mainly small local businesses, restaurants, hardware stores, ice cream shops, auto shops, that kind of thing. And the residents are so fond and really just have a real affection and adoration for our local businesses. They're part of the town. They have a real vested interest, and they do really great things.
Do you think folks, particularly after the, if you will, the blunt trauma economically of the quote unquote pandemic, do you think folks in communities like yours have woken up to the fact that they might have some special sauce there that not everybody has?
I believe so. There was a real push, and we really backed up our businesses. We didn't want to see anyone fail, and they were really in danger. And because it's such an important part of our town, we're very, very fortunate though that we haven't had any businesses shut down. They were able to withstand the closures. We made sure that we were regular patrons of whatever we could be. If we have a history of flooding here, unfortunately, being so close to the river, and some businesses have been able to withstand that. I just feel like we can withstand anything if we really have that drive to. There was a couple of businesses that were closed for a couple of years after the flooding, and they were able to bounce back. And that was just the town rallying around and making sure our businesses survive.
Well, no, it's interesting because that was going to be my segue. So great catch there. You're right near the Susquehanna River. I've driven over and around the Susquehanna River. It is, for folks, it is not the Mississippi, but a mighty river it is. I believe it was about 10 years ago that you had devastating flooding take place, which was one of those 100-year storms that we seem to get every couple of years. So I looked into that because it was just one of those memories I had. And again, it was 2011. Right now, interestingly enough, and your town is going after $50 million for a levy. Now, when we think levies, we don't typically think Pennsylvania, we think New Orleans. And so, let's talk about that, because there's a whole little, if you will, vortex that happens when towns look for money for infrastructure. And right. Now, you've got your council president, I believe her name is Ellen Quinn.
Yes.
She's got on the record as saying that that not only is this necessary, it's literally the town is at stake if we don't get this. So what happened? What impact did it have? And how has area economies adjust to it? And if you can give me a snapshot, and I know you didn't always live there, but a snapshot of how the town is trying to adapt to that and get businesses back in and recover from that.
There is a big push for the levy, and that wasn't always the case. The flood back in the 70s, Agnes, from the storm Agnes, caused really, really terrible flooding in Luzerne County. The idea of having a levy came up then. The idea failed for whatever reason. A lot of it had to do with just aesthetics. But after the flood in 2011, 2012, there were two floods actually. It was a realization that this is a danger to our livelihoods and our town, because we're in such a precarious area. So unfortunately, we weren't able to get funding from the Army Corps of Engineers. Right. They had determined that it was just the cost benefit wasn't there. So we know Bloomsburg has worked around the lack of funding from the U.S. Army Corps, and that's what we're looking towards. We're hoping for maybe some kind of other funding, grants, private funding, that sort of thing, to try to raise funds. There were different ideas that were thrown out as to how we can protect the town from flooding, but out of all of them, the best bet would be having a levee built. It's just really, really difficult to find the funds for such a project.
No, and it's fascinating because in the little bit of reading I was able to find out about it, yes, the Army Corps of Engineers said, as the saying goes, see you, but I wouldn't want to be you. It's fascinating to me that the government would actually decide that a project did not have a cost benefit result, and that's essentially what was established. You are looking about, you are having to discuss probably areas of eminent domain. You're looking at multiple parcels on one side of the river. I mean, there was a couple articles in your local paper which were exhaustive about it. And yet the amount of money, it seems, is de minimis to do it relative to the crazy projects you see everywhere. And on top of that, now I guess they're looking, and this seems to be the national Hail Mary pass. We'll throw it in under the American Rescue Plan.
Right.
Yikes! What
Right.
as a libertarian, how do you navigate these waters? What? And these are existential challenges. I'm not looking for you to solve the world, but in a real but in a real sense, this is the great question of government, isn't it? And so, how it seems like your current town leadership is just kind of throwing this up and saying, yeah, we'll just throw up anything up against the wall and we'll do it. Has anyone actually developed an actual physical cost for doing this?
Not that we have heard. There's a lot that goes on in Borough Council that we're not really fully aware of, and we don't really know what the plan is unless we ask over and over and over again. It was really unfortunate too, just the idea that, well, it's not worth, your town's not worth putting all of this money into it. It was reminiscent of Wolf's, the federal government's idea of whether or not you're essential. It was kind of that type of feel to those words. That's a really tough one. This is one of those problems that has plagued us for years, and the town is very eager to have some sort of resolution and know that we're going to have some kind of protection, some kind of plan. There's just different ideas. I know we're supposed to have a meeting, an upcoming meeting that was canceled. The flood rescue plan, I think they need to work on more before they have a meeting with the rest of the town.
Right.
We're not seeing a whole lot of plans just yet, but we're all just waiting at the edge of our seats for something to give. They've been talking about this levy for a very, very long time.
Yeah, no, and again, not to just obsess over a levy, but again, these are the challenges that libertarians face when you talk about public office in this country, because there is going to be some type of solution that has to come from a variety of sources. There may not be any one way to do this, but it's interesting. It was noted in a number of the articles that I read about is that the other town that you mentioned actually did reach out to the dreaded private sector and get investment from that. It also strikes me that it has so happened so often across this nation that flood insurance and FEMA and all that have been badly mishandled, poorly run nationally. And I'm talking about the National Flood Insurance Program. And areas like this, which are flood prone, suffer in a sense because of the incompetence. And I would argue that much more money is wasted than would probably be necessary to do this type of project. And yet now there is an economic development office, I assume. Simultaneously, what methods are they doing locally to try and bring business into the community, if at all?
Well, not that, from what I know, the major industrial areas is over the river in Pittston, and that's where a lot of the big businesses are. And like I said before, West Pittston's made up of really small businesses. So that's something that we could tap into, just because there's a shared interest, because that town is also along the river, along the Susquehanna River. There are various avenues that we're looking to. It's just, the idea of raising taxes or trying to raise money from the taxpayers is just something that I don't think, and it doesn't seem like something that is being considered, but I really is not something that I would consider myself, and I would make sure wasn't.
Excellent. And again, these are the real world challenges, folks, that libertarian candidates and libertarian elected officials, if you will. Michelle, we don't use the word govern here. We like to use the word steward. When stewarding community resources are faced with, and so where does the money come from? And again, working in conjunction with area businesses to find creative financing solutions and/or adoption of these issues is far better than some of these expensive bonded projects, which can take lifetimes to pay for, seemingly, and are often a quick fix. So my hat's off to you for at least saying, or drawing a line in the sand and saying, what, taxpayers can't afford this. Let's work to find another solution. If you're just joining us, folks, by the way, Michelle Merino is with us. She is running for the West Pittston Town Council. I've been obsessing over a little bit about the type of project that a lot of communities are starting to face, which is how do you, as a libertarian running for office, hopefully gaining elected office, manage these huge infrastructure challenges, which are facing us in part because despite the spendthrift ways of government for a generation now, often have been left to be, the proverbial can kicked down the street to the next office. We'll have a blue ribbon panel. We'll discuss it. We'll formulate ideas, but we won't actually arrive at anything. You mentioned that communication with the town people, if you will, the taxpayers, has been tough. You applied not just on this issue, but in general. What kind of relationship do folks in town have with their government?
That was a big issue all around when I would speak to people. They were actually pleasantly surprised when I would show up at their door, walking the streets, handing out brochures and literature about myself and introducing myself. It was very, people don't do this anymore. The four council members that are running, they're incumbents. I'm up against 4 incumbents, and there's 4 seats open. So really, it was a shoo-in for them until I decided to join the race. So now there's 5 of us vying for 4 seats. But other than myself, there hasn't been any campaigning. They're not visible. You don't see them anywhere. They're not out talking. Really, the only time you get to talk to Borough Council and air any concerns or grievances are at the council meetings. And those just opened back up. Prior to, September? It was still done over the phone because of COVID. Even after everything else opened up, I found very strange that the meetings were still closed. So there were a couple of, after I started campaigning and talking to people and really pushing for more of an involvement and letting the residents know, we need to start getting involved. We need to start asking more questions. We need to start demanding more transparency. We had some people show up at the borough building for a council meeting, and they were turned away because they said this meeting is closed to to in person. You're going to have to call on the phone. And this is the kind of, it seemed, according to them, it was just very cold. And that's the kind of attitude that I'm hearing from a lot of people, that they don't feel like they can talk to them. There's not a lot of response when they are reaching out. They just aren't getting much feedback. And that's something that I definitely want to change. I mean, it is so important for the residents, the taxpayers, to have a say in what is going on in their town and be aware of the decisions that are made and the money that is spent. If you go to the borough council meetings, a lot of times when they go through the reports, for example, on the agenda is the treasury report. So you think you're going to hear some type of report about the finances, and the party line is always, the treasury report has been received and is on file at the borough office. Boom, that's it. And you don't hear anything else. And it's like, well, no, I don't find that acceptable, and I don't think anybody else should. We need to know where the money is being spent, and that's a big concern. Any grants that we're receiving, the projects that are being done, we want to know, where's the money being spent, and is it being used as efficiently as possible? And that was really a major reason why I wanted to jump in there, because I have it's very, very important to me to be able to communicate with the residents and the community members the same way I would want to be heard. I want them all to feel like they are heard as well, and that they are important to the borough.
One I live in a little town called Cumberland, Rhode Island, and one thing that my town did, and I wish I could say it was my idea, very often people are frustrated. Open comment at most town council or school board meetings is a very limited time at the beginning of the meeting. And you've got parents, putting children to bed. You've got parents and folks, non-parents, if you will, getting back from work at 6 or 7 o'clock at night. You've got folks working 2 jobs. You've got folks working extra hours. You've got all sorts of reasons why that one limited 15 or 20 minutes was just didn't work. So incredibly enough, the town that I live in decided to have open comment at the beginning and the end of every town council meeting, which took the pressure off of all sorts of folks in terms of having to run there and find parking and bad weather and all of that. But what it also accomplished was a sense of openness in that we're the town council. We realized in order to run a meeting, we can't have interruptions during the meeting. It's a board meeting for the town, but meant for reporting to listen to, but at the same time to ignore that critical interaction between community members. I mean, the sheer openness of that dispels a lot of the urban myths, legends, misunderstandings that can exist, frankly, just as a result of poor communications. And in the town I live in, they put a lot of the things you were just talking about up on a website. It's a small town. It's not anything special. So that folks can drill down into whatever detail that they wish on their time, on their dime. So if someone's working 3 to 11, has got the energy at night when they come home, they can take a look at things. That should be the model for libertarians, as you're pointing out, to advance for true openness, not the sort of opaque, if you will, method of obscuring and obfuscation and of critical elements. We wouldn't stand for it as libertarians, would we? For any of the organizations we belong to. Lord knows if somebody tries to in this party, holy cow,
That's so true. Oh man, can you imagine?
Yeah. But that also talks about, campaigning. You mentioned that you've been reaching out to people a lot. We got a great picture of you driving around in your SUV with big bold letters, and we know that tends to bring. Have you been in a supermarket parking lot, attending to your family's, supermarket needs? Maybe with your husband, maybe with your kids, maybe alone on the way home from work, whatever. And all of a sudden, people see the sign, and you see them do the big U-turn, and you just realize that you're about to lose the next 45 minutes of your life. Has that happened to you yet?
It actually has. I have been in very long conversations, but I definitely don't push that off. I actually encourage it, even on the brochure that I hand out. It says right on there, feel free to reach out to me. I would love to hear from you. If you see me around the town, stop me and talk to me. I want to hear all about it. I carry around a pen and a pad when I'm handing out literature because some of the town folks have so much to say, and I want to remember all of it, and I want to make sure that those things are being addressed. And you can tell how important it is to them. They just don't ever feel like anyone has an interest that, has a chance of being out there on Borough Council. I also, an issue that I have as far as the information getting out there, that I would like to see is more use of the website. On the the information that's put out there is very few and far between. The minutes of the meetings aren't always up to date. And if it's something that they just need help with, maybe that they're not aware of how to do, I'm willing to go in there and show them and do it myself if that's what it takes. There's a lot of information that isn't put out there. There's not, a social media page or anything like that. It's really just the website. I've made an effort to share any information that I'm hearing, whether it's at the meetings or on the website. I'll share it on social media because the fact of the matter is that is one of the ways that people are communicating nowadays. They're not going to the newspapers as often as they used to. The financial information, I would love to see that on the website as well. I just don't feel like the only way that the community members are able to get information is to have to go to those council meetings or have to go to the borough building and request the reports or the financial information or the budget, things like that. They make it extremely difficult to get that information, and I don't know if that's intentional. I really hope that it's not. But if it's something that they need help with turning around, I'm more than happy to do that. I think it's very, very important to make the information as accessible as possible.
Great stuff. You know, I again, one of the fun parts about this show is I end up reading papers from newspapers from around all the country. They're online now. It's easy enough to do. I understand that gas fracking is a big issue in Pennsylvania. Has that affected Northeast Pennsylvania? And I'm reading about, you know, or I've read about in a little town, I guess, in Luzerne County called Nanticoke, where they're talking about, you know, $1 bazillion spending on this plant, which is going to be a gas manufacturing, if you will, processing plant. Do folks see that as a boon? And has gas fracking affected Luzerne County?
The residents of Luzerne County see that, from what I hear, as job opportunity. It seems, from what I've heard, welcome. It's a welcome thing. Mm-hmm. They do. The residents they find importance in the environment, of course, but any opportunities for just economic growth is always a positive thing, and it's something that they embrace.
Is economics the number one issue on voters' minds in Luzerne County? I happen to live in down towards the ABE area, Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton area, back in the 80s, and I happened to be there when steel mills were literally shuttering by the day. You know, that was, of course, the time when Billy Joel came out with that tune Allentown, which was, if you live there, not a pop tune, but a painfully accurate, if you will, reproduction of what was actually happening. Is this a type of clean industry that you need to get people back to work in your part of Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I would say so. The economy is a major concern. We have families here that need to be supported. People are looking to work, and as long as it's done safely, they are definitely open to job opportunities and any way that the economy can be helped and their finances can be helped.
There you go. We've got just a week. How many more days till Election Day?
Oof, only like 4 or 5.
What do you
very quickly.
You got a busy weekend planned? Is this? Do you sense? Oh, first of all, you mentioned that you've got 5 people gunning for 4 spots. Do you sense that your presence has energized, if you will, your opponents?
I've gotten very good feedback. I'm not quite sure. Again, our council is sort of MIA. It's very hard to gauge what it is that they're thinking or feeling or how it's affected their runs at all. And they're not campaigning. I really think that they just knew that they would be a shoo-in, you know, for incumbents and for open spots. They really didn't have to do much. And now that I'm in there, I'm not quite sure it's going to be as easy for them. Like I said, I've gotten really good feedback. I have a really good feeling. I would hope that me out there campaigning, maybe I'd see more of the other candidates, maybe trying to get out there and showing the residents and the community members what they can do for them, showing them, you know, that they are being elected for a reason. The idea that the government, the local government, the elected officials work for the community members and the voters that put them into office. I really, really hope that that is something that they take seriously, because that is a fact. They are put into office by us, the residents, the community members. So that's who they should be listening to and whose interests they should be caring about. I was a bit disheartened that they're not out there more. I welcome that sort of competition, if you will, but at least to see them out there talking. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm pretty sure they know who I am at this point. I have shown up to all the council meetings ever since they've opened to in person. I really want to see the community more involved in that. I try to encourage whenever there's a meeting coming up. I'll encourage it on my social media page even. Hey, there's a meeting coming up. Let's get in there.
And how is there? I mean, they know you're a libertarian. Are you able to run as a libertarian, or is this a non-denominational race, as I like to say?
No, I'm on the ballot as a libertarian.
Excellent.
Yeah,
that warms my heart. And folks,
that L on the ballot, absolutely.
Have folks, when you've run into folks in town halls and shopping mart lots and wherever, have they asked you about what being a libertarian means?
Some have, yeah. Some just say, "Oh, a libertarian, okay." I don't know if maybe they're familiar with it. Some have asked. Some are less interested in what the platform is as much as they are with what are you going to do for us? What can you know? So I focus sometimes more on not the libertarian platform, but how it applies. I want to be able to apply it in real life situations, because that's what's going to speak to them the most.
Absolutely.
Like I said, I love our platform and there's some great lines in there, but sometimes, especially with the average community member that's just living, trying to go about their life, they want to see it applied. And that's what I really want to show libertarians. We are a party of action. We actually have solutions. We want to make change. These are not just lines that we're throwing out. So this is what I'm here to do.
And again, you've nailed the most critical point. As much as we enjoy conversations about Austrian economics, I can guarantee folks that the majority of the greater West Pittston metropolitan area is not, in fact, acquainted at all with Rothbard or any of his ilk. That, in fact, in the year 2021, folks are worried about feeding their family, finding a way to educate their children, navigating this new reality or surreality, if you will, in terms of both healthcare and the impact of the pandemic, as it will. And these are the things that we talk about. And that's why I'm thrilled that you've been so involved in these conversations with people, because again, and by the way, on a practical level, I will tell folks that taking notes while you're engaged with folks, particularly out in everyday life, or even more importantly at an event, is a critical way of engaging with people, because it's an acknowledgement of their issues. You're writing down their issues for further reference. People are smart. In my generation, our parents, were part of a tribe within the community, and they've just followed the tribe, and God bless them. Life has changed though. And folks want to be actively engaged with leaders who are, if you will, going to reciprocate that engagement. And a great way to do that is the way that you've been doing all along. Talk to people, put your, what do we say? Put your inside voice on, your listening ears on, right? Mm-hmm. And take ample notes and acknowledge their concerns.
Absolutely.
That kind of communication is in fact the key. Now, so what are you doing for your last weekend? And we enter a part of the show that we call shameless self-promotion, because I predict great things for you. I think my spidey sense tells me you're going to be successful, but there's also a life going forward where you're going to need people's support, not just this weekend, but in order to advance your work within the halls of government, as we say, AKA Mordor, that you're going to need that support. So how can people reach out to you financially? How can people reach out to you in terms of volunteer work? How can people make West Pittston, Pennsylvania, a home for liberty?
Well, they can visit my website. It's the Luzerne County LP website, but I also have a page on there. So you would visit luzernelp.com/Michelle Merino. I can be found on all social medias: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. So if you just search my name on there, I'll pop up. This weekend, I will be out there every moment that I can. Unfortunately, it's getting dark sooner, so that's been cutting my time in half, but the plan is to hit up as many homes, as many streets as I possibly can. I've been doing this since July, August, when our petitions were due. I took a little bit of a break afterwards because it was a lot of work. I did a whole lot of walking. Then I picked it back up again. So that's what I'll be doing. Hopefully the weather holds out. It's been really just nasty out there. But you know, honestly, rain or shine, I'll be out there, even if I have to wear a poncho. I really plan on being out there, handing out my literature, trying to meet as many people as possible. Financially, I've been funding everything myself, which is totally the way I like to do things anyway. I'm not a whole lot of financial type of support that I've been looking for, but it's more just.
Well, now I'm going to tease you on that a little bit.
Okay.
A smart guy I know, his name is Dan Fishman. You probably met Dan or heard of Dan in your travels, has a great way of putting it. And part of the show is to just throw out best practices and tips and exchange information. It's a conversation. I would always say to candidates, on a very practical level, when folks send you money, first of all, it's because they support they support your work ethic. There's something about you that they find compelling and urgent enough, particularly in days of challenge days like this, in order to lend help to you financially. And it can be a $5 gift, a $25 gift, whatever. It on its most superficial level, you know, the whole mother's milk thing is true. It allows you to spend a little bit of extra money on the office. But I'll just throw out to candidates this important consideration. When someone sends you money, particularly right now, particularly if it's from an area of the country that you're not familiar with, someone you may have never met, that's because they want to invest in you, Michelle Merino, and they want to invest in your candidacy and what you represent, not only just to the Libertarian Party in Luzerne County, but also what you represent to the Libertarian philosophy at all. Because ultimately, the point of this show is equal parts. Let's talk about real world issues in your community and how you react to them as a Libertarian, but also how we can develop the sense amongst Libertarian candidates nationwide, much like the Bernie Bros. Oof, hate saying that. But much like them, that listen, if the word goes out, because I'm secretly on some of their mailing lists. All right. If the word goes out,
secret anymore.
Right. If the word goes out, they don't know the names. My middle name is sock account. All right. If the word goes out that we need $10, there's a whole lot of people who will find a way to cough up $10. And this is what I'm trying to champion within the Libertarian movement. $5 or $10 from a couple hundred people nationwide for a candidacy like yours or any others means, holy cow, we got $1,000 to drop on. But most importantly, there's that bond now because they feel it's kind of like when you go to a great restaurant and you can go to your friends. Oh, I went to Chez Pascal. I went to, oh, it was great, man. You feel like you're part of it. There's a connection there that you make. And I just want to encourage candidates as we start to, and incredibly enough, right? You know, we people work their butts off until Tuesday, and then all of a sudden, all right, you know, we're going to take a week off, maybe, and then we listen. We're Libertarians. We got to get right back to it. 2022 is, you know, tomorrow is only a day away. 2022 is now a year away. The midterm elections, which for much of the country, now it's interesting, Pennsylvania works on a different time clock, if you will, but for much of the country, the big kahuna is 2022. And I'm asking people on both sides, candidates, to ask for money. And I'm asking folks in the Libertarian Nation to find ways to send small amounts of money to candidates they know they'll never meet. It's kind of like being the ultimate political secret Santa, right? Because I will tell you, when you open up that mail, and I've seen it happen to candidates, it typically happens on a really crappy day. The weather's been tough. You know, maybe a couple people slammed their doors in your face. Maybe you ran into a couple of Bernie bros and had to deal with that logic. Oof. Right? Maybe,
Absolutely.
maybe.
Yeah, I've
And
been there.
oh, let me check the mail on the way home. And all of a sudden you open up the mail and there's a $25 or a $50 check from some guy in Nebraska. And you're like, holy cow, some guy in Nebraska sent me money. And that's what we need to do. We are not just a philosophy. We're not just a philosophy club. We need to become more of a movement. We're all true believers in liberty, aren't we?
Yes, sir.
So let's, I guess my personal hashtag for the show for the last few months, my saying was, let's get to work. My message for this year coming up is, let's take it personally. The state has intruded into our lives in manners heretofore thought impossible. It could never happen. And yet, how many of our friends have been moved from the category of being conspiracy theorists to conspiracy realists? I would say a great deal of us. I, in my wildest dreams, would never, last night, and I'll wrap this up here, but last night I attended a school committee meeting in the town of Barrington, Rhode Island, a lovely town, not just a town, but a burg, not just a burg, but a way of life, where everyone's first name is Lovey, and they all talk about the sandwiches at the club just aren't what they seem to be. But at the same time, this community, which sees itself as this paragon of virtue and virtue signaling and pro-clutching and all things godly liberal, all right, where diversity is key and we must celebrate each other's unlimited potential, particularly if it's at the cost of others, all right? When all this is happening, they decided they were going to fire 3 teachers because those teachers did not comply with their own, not state mandated, not federally mandated, their own personally school committee inflicted vaccination mandate.
Oof.
All right. And these 3 teachers just found out weeks ago, there's no future for them in terms of immediate employment. There was a kangaroo court last night. It was appalling. And I live in a state where the folks who worked in the medical community who choose not to be vaccinated. Yeah, body autonomy, anyone? Anyone? Bueller? All right? Right? The people who had literally worn trash bags as PPE in the height of this, who somehow had managed to keep and save lives, if you listen to all the political record, over the last 2 years, have managed to save people's lives. And we're the fete, the grand dames at the ball, if you will. Until one day it was decided in terms of political expediency that they would have to lose, only them, no one else, not the police, not the fire, not anyone else would have to lose their jobs if in fact they didn't get the shot. Now, for the record, I decided to get the shot. That was my decision. But these people are out of work now. And the state, incredibly enough, is very interested in making sure that those who are state employees be found future employment. But for those people who work in the dreaded private sector, sucks to be you. So that's the nation and the state that we live in right now, where the true 1% are government employees and people who, if you will, seek succor at the teat of government. And those of us in the dreaded private sector who are responsible for our own personal fortunes are left to drown. And that, my friend, is the political landscape that you inherit. And as a result, I give you all the credit in the world, and I will give you the blessing that I give all libertarian candidates, because your sacrifice in terms of time away from your family, financial, professional, and even sometimes social, as people look at you, you're not one of us. You don't simply, adhere to the status quo. There are personal sacrifices made by everyone in this movement, and I celebrate them, and I thank you for them. And I guess this is, in a sense, the last real show we'll do before the election for candidates. So for anyone who's been a candidate who might be listening tonight or in the next few days, this will be on replay on Libertarian Party Facebook page. They all sit here in perpetuity. I would say to you that look to the people in your community, in your libertarian community, in your libertarian family, in your libertarian life who have run for office, who've supported those who run for office, whether it be through sweat equity, sneakers, worn sneakers, or financial support, and thank them. Because it is the liberty community that is the, if you will, the barrier, the wall, the dam between here and a state of totalitarianism. Some will argue we're already there, despite the efforts of all. You saw Michelle Merino. I applaud your courage and your stick-to-itiveness and your work ethic and your love of liberty, and all the folks in Pennsylvania that I've had the opportunity to meet, and those I haven't, and across the country, people who've worked for candidacies and been candidates, because the sacrifice you make, as I always say, short of acting in our nation's defense, is the greatest sacrifice one can make as an American. And I salute you, and I wish you nothing but Godspeed.
Well said, Pat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity, and that was fantastic advice, especially for a first-time candidate like myself who has no experience in this.
Nope, you're listening. You're in it to win it. You know,
Absolutely.
regardless of what happens, you're in it to win it. This is the beginning of an adventure for you that I believe is going to take a very long time and be full of excitement and challenges and, you know, the occasional pitfall. And, you know, you're in that. I'll close out with this. People complain about, we should, as libertarians, have more of a bench, have people running for the grassroots level. Well, I can attest to you personally, after having met you and the literally 100 or 150 candidates that I've met over the last year or so, in person, virtually or otherwise, that we have an amazing bench. We have an amazing group of people here who are dedicated to liberty in our lifetime. And for all of those who are frustrated with events that happen at the national level, events that seem to happen in the soap opera world of social media, all of that, I say to you, stop what you're doing, go to your computer, find a candidate that's local to you, and get to work. Folks, you've been listening to Candidates Corner on LPD TV, a production of the Libertarian Party and Libertarian National Committee. Whitney Bilyeu serving as chair. A big thanks to John Gapso on the big board. I know we had a couple of tech problems, and as always, he came to the rescue and made this show work. Reminders, Tuesday night, election coverage. Be there, right here on LPTV at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Karen and all the folks at LPTV, including myself, are working to put, in fact, we're going to have a little dress rehearsal after this again, are working to put together an election night that is better than even the big boys. You know why? For two reasons. Number one, we really like all the people that are running for office under the Libertarian Party. And number two, we're right. So please join us at 8 o'clock. Hey, next weekend, Syracuse, New York, the Empire State Liberty Summit. Tony DiRazio is running, along with Cody and the whole gang of folks in New York State, are running a hella fun event up at the Collegian Hotel in Syracuse, New York. Mrs. Spike Cohen will be there, along with some other guy named Spike, and a variety of libertarian luminaries, if you will, folks who are going to be poised to give great advice, great training on how to win campaigns, how to run campaigns. All of that will be there. Your host will be there to babble on incoherently about earned media opportunities and his experiences out on the campaign trail for people like Joe Jorgensen, as well as here in scenic New England. So, folks, take an opportunity. If you're anywhere near Syracuse, New York, better yet, if you can't make it to Syracuse and you're involved with an affiliate, see if you can put together a weekend like this. It doesn't have to be as big as a New York State production, but states like New York and Pennsylvania and Alaska and around the country have put together wonderful events in the past few months. It's a growing thing. It is a thing, and it's a wonderful thing. Folks, a couple days left. Let's get the hell to work. We'll see you next week. Thank you.